Hello, good evening. It's News360 coming to you live from the News Hub here at Adesawe Kanda. I am Portia Gabo.
Hello, good evening to you. I am Noble Crosby, and these are the headlines of the bulletin tonight.
News360 Headlines is brought to you by
EcoBank,
Pepsodent Charcoal and Pepsodent Herbal.
This evening, Economic and Organized Crime Office Yoko begins tracing funds and assets linked to Asante Beko bribery case following his U.S. conviction. Details shortly.
Also coming up tonight, Minerals Commission takes over Adamus Mines as government assures workers of job security and plans production restarts.
Ghana Police promotes 25 personnel for outstanding roles in fighting violent crime and armed robbery.
Later in business news, Securities and Exchange Commission Chair urges urgent insolvency law reforms to protect depositors who currently rank among the last to be paid when financial institutions collapse.
In international news tonight, authorities in Mali say their soldiers killed dozens of militant Islamists as they repelled an attack on a military base on Sunday. Welcome to the program. We're live also on all our social media platforms at TV3 Ghana. You can join us there and get interactive with us as we settle for the details of the story, starting from here.
In our very first story, the Economic and Organized Crime Office says it has begun tracing funds and assets that may be linked to the bribery case involving former Goldman Sachs banker and former Tema Oil Refinery Managing Director Asante Kweku Beko. The move follows the conviction in the United States of Asante Beko over his alleged role in a scheme to bribe Ghanaian government officials in connection with a power plant project. Ioke says asset tracing and recovery form a key part of its investigation into the Ghanaian dimension of the case.
Well, more than a decade after Ghana's emergency power deal with Turkish firm Aksa, the bribery allegations surrounding it are back in focus. Former banker Asante Kweku Beko has been convicted in the United States for his role in the scheme, and Yoko says that it is now intensifying investigations into the Ghanaian side. I followed the money trail and answered some questions of who received what. Here's the story.
To understand this case, we have to go back to December 2014. Ghana was in the middle of power shortage, which led to power cuts popularly referred to as Dumso. The country urgently needed more electricity, and Turkish company Aksa Energy was pursuing an emergency power project of up to 370 megawatts. At the time, Asante Kweku Beko was an executive director at Goldman Sachs, helping to arrange and manage financing for the transaction. But Aksa could not simply arrive in Ghana and begin producing power. The project needed to move through different layers of government, the Power Ministry, Cabinet and Parliament, with institutions including GRIDCO and PURC also involved. In simple terms, several people and institutions had the power to move the deal forward or hold it back, and U.S. prosecutors say that approval process was corrupted with bribes. In 2015, prosecutors say Asante Kweku Beko and others discussed paying $1 million to Ghana's Ministry of Power. Around the same period, 5 Ghanaian officials were flown to Turkey to inspect Aksa's equipment. Their flights and accommodation were paid for, and the prosecutors say each received $5,000 in cash. Then the money trail widened. Internal records cited in the case contain entries for PURC, GRIDCO engineers, a power team, and Parliament. After Parliament approved the power agreement in July 2015, prosecutors say Beko and his associates discussed about $250,000 in bribes to various individuals, including $46,000 paid to members of parliament. The US case says the payments were heading through shell companies, false invoices, nominee accounts, and cash withdrawals. Berko also used personal emails and misled Goldman Sachs' own compliance team. Goldman eventually pulled out of the transaction because of corruption concerns, and because part of the money moved through US bank accounts, the trail eventually led to an American courtroom. On August 6, a federal jury in Brooklyn convicted Berko of foreign bribery and money laundering offenses. He faces up to 30 years in prison, with sentencing scheduled for November 10. But that conviction settles only Berko's part of the case. Iyoko says American authorities had already asked Ghana last year for information on specific individuals, including a former minister of state and some public servants. It says preliminary investigations began with the Attorney General, while Ghanaian authorities followed the US proceedings for evidence. Now that Berko has been convicted, the Attorney General has directed Iyoko to intensify the Ghanaian investigation. That includes identifying beneficiaries, tracing assets, and potentially recovering proceeds linked to criminal conduct. Former Power Minister Dr. Kwabena Donkor has denied any involvement, saying he never met Berko, never authorized anyone to seek money on his behalf, and never received any benefit. And Iyoko itself cautions that Berko's conviction does not automatically establish the guilt of anybody in Ghana. Each person must still be investigated on the evidence. So, more than 10 years after the power deal was signed, the question has moved from Brooklyn back to Accra. Who received the money and what did they do in return? Noble Crosbyan and TV3 News, Accra.
Now, Mariada is the Executive Director of Transparency International Ghana. She's joining us to answer some questions on what all of this mean in a fight against corruption and bribery. Mary, thank you for joining us. Good evening to you. My first question to you is, as an anti-graft campaigner, I'm sure you've followed the trial outcome and the comments that have come also as a result. The positioning of the AG and the statements from Iyoko and the OSP, they've all released statements. What do you make of the development so far?
Thank you very much. Good evening and good evening to your cherished viewers. From an anti-corruption perspective, it's a sad reflection of the enforcement asymmetry between jurisdictions, which we continue to be known. We realize from the case that the US brought their Foreign Corrupt Practices Act into bear when it talked about the civil issues. And you realize with certainty the way the process went in the United States of America. This raises the issues of legitimacy and commitment when it comes to the fight against corruption in our jurisdiction. And it was interesting that after the indictment, we see state officials now begin to give some credence to the fact that they need to act. And so there are directives that are going up and down within the state. We heard from the Office of the Special Prosecutor on Friday as to the part they played in this indictment and during the trial processes by giving evidence. Today we have heard from Iyoko. And for me, one thing is clear, that crime is not time-bound. And so if the U.S. has been able to secure an indictment and conviction, then Ghana must also then step up and see how we can also deal with this issue. Because you see, we are saying this from a point of view that our institutions, including Parliament, which is supposed to be the oversight, and ensure that whatever contracts are brought into are rightly and duly scrutinized before approval is given. Now we hear people were employed giving money, including our parliamentarians, to then fast-track this process. So it is incumbent on us that as government has committed to this research agenda, all we expect is that whether it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago, we are expecting some action here because clearly it has tarnished the image of Ghana when it comes to promoting transparency and accountability of public office. And many of the instances, including PUIC, have not conducted themselves well. And so we need to give them the opportunity to do a thorough investigation to ensure that we are making some significant gains. And we want the people to believe so that we really want to fight corruption.
Right, Mary, it brings me to my next question, and if you can be brief for us, we'd appreciate it. How soon do you expect Ghanaian authorities to act over the findings and arrive at a certain conclusion?
I believe that there is enough, if there is an indictment from another jurisdiction, there is so much information. And so we don't certainly say that the high government officials and then all those who have been cited are guilty. We need to also activate our processes.
Right.
And our processes are very clear. The criminal offences have different opportunities to ensure that whatever we do, we give people the opportunity to defend themselves. So that's what we want to see. Everybody who has been cited must be called to accountability. And in that process, we expect the local, the OSCs, and the Attorney General's office to coordinate effectively so that we don't leave any food unturned in this process.
Thank you.
Because we need to serve a signal that we are serious when it comes to fighting corruption.
Thank you so much. Mariada is the Executive Director of Transparency International Ghana, speaking with us there, letting us know her thoughts on what all of this mean in the country's fight against corruption. Let's see on the screens right now some facts, as we know, concerning this Aksa deal, and you see that on your screens right now. The deal at a glance is that Aksa Energy entered Ghana during the height of the Dumsor crisis, and we're talking about the period when Ghana needed immediate energy supplements. Now, the deal was for 370 megawatt of emergency power project. At that time, Ghana was under pressure to secure power quickly because the situation was dire. The agreement became part of government's emergency response plan, and the transaction became the focus of the U.S. bribery and money laundering case. Let me walk you through the timelines. December 2014, Kwabena Donkor was appointed power minister. Early 2015, in the thick of the power crisis in the country, that's when Aksa entered into the conversation broadly. Aksa negotiations began to gather momentum at that period. April, key meetings and a trip to Turkey took place. That trip was intended for officials to pre-inspect the Aksa company and the shipment of the consignment that would be given to Ghana. After the trip in May 2015, an agreement was signed. July 2015, Parliament approves the deal. You see how it traveled from April to May to June to July, I beg your pardon. Parliament approves the deal, and then in August, Aksa publicly presented as part of the Dumsor solution. And then we fast forward to April 2020. US SEC exposes bribery allegations. And then Mr. Beku, in this case, settles SEC civil case in the US in 2021. He's arrested in 2022 in the UK. He's extradited to the US in 2024. And then August 2026, he's convicted on all counts in US court. So we're waiting for sentencing. And what we hear is that he may be facing up to 30 years in prison. So these are the facts of the case as we have now, and the timelines of the case as we have now. Of course, here at TV3 and all the media general platforms, will be keeping an eye on the development. However, the case travels, however the saga develops, we'll bring you details in subsequent bulletins. Let's do some other stories tonight.
Yes, and in more news tonight, the Lands Minister Emmanuel Ama Kofi-Boa has ordered the Minerals Commission to seize full control of Adamus Mines effective immediately, promising workers their jobs are safe as officials push to restart full production From the Western region, Irama Smith has more.
Government has upheld the revocation of Adamus Resources' mining lease, a decision first triggered back in April by a Minerals Commission report citing grave violations of the country's mining laws. Among the findings, illegal subcontracting without ministerial consent, mining without permit, environmental degradation, and foreign nationals operating outside designated areas. Adamus petitioned against the move, prompting a ministerial review. Now, with that review complete, Lands Minister Emmanuel Amakofi-Boaz says the revocation stands, but the focus is now on the future. The Minerals Commission is taking administrative control to clear outstanding salaries, restart the processing plant, resolve safety issues, and protect workers' jobs.
And I have concluded as a minister to uphold the revocation. What that means going forward is that the Minerals Commission should with immediate effect take administrative control of this mine. Work with you to ensure that workers are paid and work to make sure that the processing plant is up and running and all the safety issues addressed, take remedial measures to also ensure.
The minister stressed that the government was interested in creating the conditions for the mine to attract the necessary capital and technical investment required to expand and transform its operations.
The overarching objective is to make sure that this mine is working actively and the right investments that will expand this mine and make sure that we can ensure the security of jobs for workers here. And that is our preoccupation, that we protect not only the sanctity of this mine, but jobs of employees, which is really the preoccupation of the president. But I think it's also very critical that my understanding is that there has not been, a lot of them have not only been paid, but have been made redundant. I think that has to be addressed with immediate effect and make sure they come back to work. And then we can make sure that the next steps are taken.
Irama Smith, TV3 News, Western Region.
To some other stories tonight, and Vice President Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman says government is pursuing reforms to empower metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies with the resources, capacity and authority needed to respond effectively to the needs of citizens. She made the remarks at the opening of the second National Dialogue on Decentralization and Responsive Governance in Accra.
Ghana is marking 37 years of its decentralization journey with a renewed call for stronger local institutions, greater citizen participation and improved service delivery. Vice President Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman says government's decentralization agenda is anchored in the National Decentralization Policy and Strategic Framework, which provides a clear roadmap for strengthening local institutions and accelerating development at a local level. The Vice President said recent flooding in parts of the country highlights the consequences of poor waste management, inadequate sanitation and weak enforcement of environmental standards.
As our part of Clean Up Ghana campaign, we are intensifying monthly cleanup exercises. However, this cannot remain a monthly event. Cleanliness must become a daily discipline. To reinforce this commitment, sanitation performance is now a key performance indicator for metropolitan, municipal, and district chief executives. Assemblies will be expected to demonstrate measurable improvements in cleanliness and waste management.
Education Minister Haruna Idrisu has meanwhile called for a reset of democratic decentralization and an increase in the District Assembly's Common Fund.
We had said that in the NDC manifesto, we will adjust the District Assembly Common Fund from 5 to 7.5%. So the president's thinking and vision on deepening democratic decentralization, including the election of MMDCs, is to dedicate that 1% increase to health, decentralization, and devolution. These were the principles we agreed to. So we cannot be walking back, but we cannot do it if the District Assembly Common Fund, maybe the minister cannot say it, I'll say it for him. He depends on the District Assembly Common Fund. If he's going to rely on releases from Ministry of Finance, the ministry won't function effectively and well. Just like me, I won't function well and effectively without GET fund.
The outgoing Minister for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, Ahmed Ibrahim, expressed concern about inadequate financing for the sector.
The Minister of Finance must not look at the sanitation as a waste. If we are able to sensitize everybody, all these players come on board with the needed resources. Sometimes capacity is resource. And therefore, very important is the Ministry of Finance. How are we going to pay for the desilting? By end of March or April, we should finish all desilting. All storm drains must be checked. All contracts must be awarded. But we don't wait when flood come in 29 June, then August you give me commencement authorization to go and do what?
The Executive Secretary of the Interministerial Coordinating Committee on Decentralization, Dr. Gameli Huadofia, urged stakeholders to focus on achieving tangible results. The two-day dialogue brought together government officials, local authorities, development partners, academia, and other stakeholders to chart a new path towards responsive and accountable local governance.
In more news tonight, the Ghana Police Service has promoted 25 personnel for their outstanding roles in the fight against violent crime, particularly armed robbery. The personnel drawn from Tema, Western, Central and Bono East police regions were recognized for their contribution to 3 major security operations in the past month.
The promotions cut across various ranks from Lance Corporal to Corporal, Corporal to Sergeant, Sergeant to Inspector, and Inspector to Chief Inspector. The Chief Inspectors have also been granted direct entry into the Police Academy, where they will be commissioned as senior officers. Speaking at a ceremony at the police headquarters in Accra, the Director of Public Affairs of the Ghana Police Service, DCOP Grace Ansa Akrofi, said the promotions were to reward personnel who had distinguished themselves in the line of duty.
The ceremony you witnessed today is an assurance to all personnel of the Ghana Police Service that the administration sees what you do, the administration appreciates what you do, and the administration will continue to acknowledge and honor personnel who distinguish themselves.
She said personnel in the Tema region were recognized for their role in an anti-narcotics operation that led to the recovery of about 866 parcels of cocaine. In the Bono East region, officers arrested suspected robbers linked to the theft of computers and money, leading to the recovery of the stolen items. Personnel in the Western Central region also helped arrest suspected armed robbers who targeted miners and stole gold, which was later recovered. DCOP Ansan Krofi said the recognition forms part of Inspector General of Police Christian Teteyewunu's commitment to rewarding officers who demonstrate dedication and professionalism. She urged the beneficiaries to serve as examples to their colleagues and encourage all police personnel to remain committed to protecting lives and property. Joseph Armstrong, Gold, Alubwe TV3, Accra.
From security to tourism right now, the Minister for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts, Jifa Abla Gumashi, says Ghana recorded 1.3 million international tourists arrivals in 2025, an increase from the over 1.2 million arrivals recorded in 2024. She also disclosed that domestic tourism recorded a 7% growth, with visits increasing from 1.68 million in 2024 to 1.79 million in 2025.
International tourist arrivals reached 1,303 962 people in 2025, which is an increase over the 2024 figure of 1288804. Domestic tourism grew from 1.68 million visits in 2024 to 1.7 million visits in 2025, representing 7% growth. The total revenue generated from the arrivals in 2025 is 4.34 billion, I beg your pardon. The 10 most visited attractions in Ghana combined to draw 1,377,588 visitors in 2025. This accounted for roughly 77% of all domestic tourism site visits nationwide. These sites are Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park, Kakum National Park, Bunsu Aboritum Eco Park, Cape Coast Castle, Menchia Palace, Kumasi Zoo, Accra Zoo, Elmina Castle, Shai Hills Resource Reserve, and Abri Botanical Gardens. May I add real quick that 3 out of the 10 are directly under the ministry. The others are handled differently from the ministry.
It's now time for the weather update, and mostly cloudy weather will prevail across parts of the country this evening into the night, with few cases of rainfall activities. Early tomorrow morning, mist or fog patches are likely to develop along the coast, mountainous and forest zones, leading to reduced visibility.
Weather News segment is brought to you by Syntex Tank.
Hello there, good evening and welcome to the business segment here on News 360. I am Michael Obodu. Now, the board chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Dr. Edu Anani-Antwi, is calling for an urgent review of Ghana's corporate insolvency framework to give depositors stronger protection when financial institutions go into liquidation. He argues that depositors are at the core of the banking business and should not be treated like ordinary unsecured creditors after entrusting their funds to financial institutions.
Dr. Edu Anani-Antwi says Section 107 of the Corporate Insolvency and Restructuring Act places depositors too low in the order of priority during liquidation, despite their funds being the primary source of financing for banks and other deposit-taking institutions.
Under the law, it's like the depositors are only placed above shareholders, preference shareholders and ordinary shareholders. That is how bad I think our law is, that it doesn't give a serious attention to depositors' funds.
The SEC board chair says the law must therefore be amended to create a special framework for financial institutions, arguing that stronger protection for depositors will also help preserve investor confidence in the financial sector.
As for liquidation or whatever, it's like death. You can't write it away. Definitely a company, one or two companies may suffer going into distress and entry into liquidation. But if it's a financial institution, I think that we should make the provision better to cater for the depositors who have given their money to you. Because those, I call it trust money. There's an element of trust.
Let's bring you some more stories now. It has been 31 days since the High Court cleared the way for the Ghana Shippers Authority to enforce a cap on container administrative charges imposed on shipping lines. But freight forwarders say some shipping companies are still charging well above the approved limit. The Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders GIF says the situation could trigger a sit-down strike in the coming days.
And one shipping says they won't beat us because they are the Lord themselves.
Anger and frustration among freight forwarders and clearing agents at Ghana's ports as they accuse some shipping lines of charging administrative fees well above the approved cap. The Ghana Shippers Authority has set an interim limit of 720 Ghana cedis per one standard 20-foot shipping container following complaints over high charges. The High Court on 10 July dismissed an application by shipping companies seeking to stop enforcement of the directive. But freight forwarders say some shipping lines continue to charge thousands of cedis.
We are extremely angry today simply because we have realized that we have stakeholders who do not regard regulations, who do not obey the laws of the industry, who think they are bigger and better than everybody in the industry, so they do whatever they want. They do everything at their whims and their caprices. That is why we are extremely angry, because we can't live in an ecosystem whereby one entity believes that they don't obey the laws of the ecosystem.
The Ghana Institute of Freight Forwarders laments that the continued charges are increasing the cost of doing business at the ports. It is demanding full enforcement of the directive and has threatened a sit-down strike if the situation is not resolved.
If you keep talking and you don't get the needed result, you demonstrate. We are going to demonstrate big time. That is why we didn't want to get there. But with what is happening, we have no option to demonstrate, to go on sit-down strikes. We are going to bear our teeth to the government. Because if the government decides not to apply the law, not to punish them, not to discipline them, but we citizens should suffer, then we are going to prove to the government that indeed we have social contract to the government.
The Ghana Shippers Authority has directed shipping lines and their agents to comply with the 720 cedi cap and says it will take action against non-compliant operators. Let's bring you updates now from the currency and the commodities market.
Women's World Cup after a 2-1 quarterfinal defeat to Malawi at the ongoing Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco. However, their World Cup hopes still remain alive, with Ghana now set to face Cote d'Ivoire in a crucial playoff for a place at next year's tournament in Brazil. My colleague Aksa J has more on the road ahead for the Black Queens.
A 2-1 defeat to Malawi means that the Black Queens of Ghana are no longer in contention for the WAFCON trophy or any medal at all at the 2026 Women's African Cup of Nations. But the mission to qualify to the World Cup for the first time in 20 years is still very much on course, as the Black Queens have the opportunity to qualify for the Intercontinental Playoff on the 13th of August 2026 if they win their play-in game against Ivory Coast in Casablanca. The Intercontinental Playoffs will be played in 2 phases, the first round and the second round. And for the first round, which will be very crucial if the Queens make it, will be played in a form of a league. If they emerge as top 2, they qualify to the final phase to play against teams from the other federations across the world. Meanwhile, 2026 WAFCON will have a new winner, as Morocco, Cameroon, Algeria and Malawi have never won the title in the tournament history. And these 4 countries have also booked their automatic slot to Brazil 2027.
So that match between the Black Queens and Cote d'Ivoire will take place on Thursday. However, to some more stories where Somali referee Omar Altan has arrived in Salzburg, Austria, ahead of Wednesday's historic UEFA Super Cup final between Paris Saint-Germain and Aston Villa. Altan will become the first non-European referee to officiate the prestigious fixture, leading an all-African officiating team. His appointment marks a remarkable comeback after missing out on the 2026 FIFA World Cup following a visa setback in the United States of America. Before we go, let's bring you some transfer stories where Ghana international Daniel Kofi has officially completed a move to German second-tier outfit VfL Osnabrück on a free transfer. The 30-year-old attacking midfielder joins Osnabrück on a fresh deal as he aims to revive his career following a long battle with a serious knee injury that kept him out of competitive action for nearly 4 years. The move sees Tre reunite with head coach Timo Schulz, who previously coached the Ghana playmaker during a highly successful spell together at FC St. Pauli. You can get more transfer news on our social media handles at 3Sports. My name is Ore Kwampofo, and up next on the bulletin is entertainment.
In my line of work, a confident smile is everything. Kale Charcoal Toothpaste keeps me on top of my game and ensures my smile is always radiant and bright.
With the tiring nature of my
here on News 360. My name is Noella Donko. The competitive race for the most coveted crown officially began on Sunday night as all 16 contestants brought their best to the stage. Themed My Region, the first performance night was a celebration of the places that shaped them. That is the people, the history, the traditions, food and stories that make each region unique. Greater Accra's Lamile emerged as the first star performer of the season. Following last week's grand unveiling, the stage was set for the fired-up contestants to deliver their first performances, and they did not disappoint. Themed My Region, the contestants took audiences on a journey through the places that shaped them, celebrating their people, history, traditions, food, and the stories that make each region unique.
The land where the black and white Volta rivers meet to form a breathtaking confluence. The land of the ancient Larbanga Mosque and the mysterious Mystic Stone.
From the timeless legacy of the Upper East region to the discovery of the Western region, a land where history, nature, and dreams flourish together, each contestant brought their region to life through captivating storytelling.
The Tingzu Shrine, the Sirigu Poetry Arts, just to mention but a few. Look at my beautiful skin. This is kind courtesy, our locally made shea butter. Kuriya, kuriya. Kuriya, kuriya.
This evening's performance has been a good experience of them showing the regions where they have come from, trying to sell out their regions to attract attention and, to get to know the regions they have come from. I think they have made very good choices so that they don't recount the usual stories, so everybody has brought some nuanced details about their regions that we didn't know before.
After hours of riveting performances and storytelling, Greater Accra Region's Lamile stood out from the pack, earning the first Star Performer Award of the season.
I'm a slimmer. Lamile Slay Mama.
First performance, and I just want star performance. So every single day, I think there's going to be an expectation that I do more than I did the previous week. And so yes, but that is also a motivation to me to continue to, attain and achieve higher, and also to do more for myself and my region. So I take that as a motivation to do more.
This region, Homo reminds us that no hardship lasts forever. Asafotufiam tells us that we are so brave, and modern initiatives like Chalewati, they let us know that our culture is.
Well, that's it for the Entertainment News segment here on News 360. My name is Noella Donko.
Thank you so much, Noella. On the international front, authorities in Mali say their soldiers killed dozens of militant Islamists as they repelled an attack on a military base on Sunday. Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslim, a jihadist group affiliated to Al-Qaeda, said it was behind the assault where its fighters took control of the base in the town of San. The army disputed it had ceded control, but said its soldiers had to retreat temporarily.
Still in international news, Iran said it is nearing a final pact with Oman, defining new shipping lanes between them through the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran, however, repeated that the U.S. must meet other conditions, including compensation and an end to sanctions and military threats before the strategic waterway is reopened. The strait, through which about a fifth of global oil and liquefied natural gas flowed prior to the conflict, has been effectively blocked since the U.S.-Israel attacks on Iran on February 28, pushing up oil prices and inflation.
And more international news tonight. The world's oceans hit their hottest ever recorded temperatures for July, partly fueled by developing El Nino conditions in the Pacific. That's according to the EU's Climate Monitoring Service. The average sea surface temperature outside the world's polar regions between 60 degrees north and 60 degrees south was 20.96 Celsius last month, beating the previous high of 20.89 degrees Celsius set in 2023.
And thank you for spending the last hour with us on News 360. There's always more news on our website, 3news.com. I am Noble Crosby Anna.
And I am Portia Gabodu. Join Alfredo Kansa at 10 p.m. for Ghana Tonight. Good evening.